Look at those people who are waiting right at that webinar door to come in early.
Nice. Hey, thank you for joining us today. We're going to get started right at the top of the hour, so hang tight.
But at least we have the screen up. Everyone knows that they're in the right place.
Excellent.
Got a ton of people joining. Look at that. Everybody wants to learn about cybersecurity.
Shanna, you are popular like that.
I don't know about that. They heard there's a pretty solid chance that something crazy might happen, or yeah, I might say something totally goofy and off the walls.
Well, that is probably guaranteed, but
pretty much like or maybe they just heard that they could potentially hear the story about that time that I wired $2.1 million to a cyber attacker as a real estate paralegal. That's always a fun one.
That's a good one. It looks like we still have a few participants rolling in, so we're going to wait just another couple of minutes.
Yeah, we got a minute to the hour. Look at all these early birds. I would say you get the worm, but I heard we got free lunch, so that's even better.
Ooh, yeah, hopefully they didn't order worms through Grubhub. That'd be nasty.
Although Grubhub, I mean, come
right?
on.
Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, we got the jokes here today, guys.
Jokes on jokes. Got a lot of hellos, good mornings, greetings, happy new year. Hello from San Francisco. Where else is everybody tuning in from? Go ahead and drop that in the chat.
So we always start my team meetings off with a corny dad joke. Today's dad joke brought to you by the letter A. What do you call a grand piano that gets dropped down a mine?
I haven't heard this one.
A flat minor. Dun, 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 dun.
I love it.
Nice. Oh, we had a ton of good ones one time. What's Forrest Gump's favorite password?
Yes, I know this.
Forrest one.
One Forrest one.
Which we will talk about why that's not a very good password. So, yes.
All right, we're expecting a large turnout today, guys. So give it one more minute. So I still see a few connecting here and let you get settled. For those of you still joining us, welcome. We want to be very mindful of your time, so we will be starting in 60 seconds.
In the meantime, I just want to tell you all a quick story about the other day. I spotted an albino Dalmatian. It was the least I could do for it. Do dad jokes count if you're not a dad?
Well, yes, because I'll steal them. I'm putting them on a sticky note, and I will use them on the next stand-up that we have at Creative Agility.
Nice. We've got somebody with a raised hand. I don't know if this participant meant to raise the hand. Ooh, we have a good dad joke. All right.
Go, Elise. What is a good dad joke? What does Mario wear? I don't know. What's Mario wear?
You're killing me.
Oh, the anticipation. And to answer the lunch questions, anyone in the New Orleans area or Louisiana in general should have gotten denim, denim, denim. That's funny. Oh, you should have gotten a Grubhub imitation.
Denim, denim, denim.
Denim, 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 denim. Okay.
All
Shall
right,
we kick this off?
All
right. I could do dad jokes all day, but I'm more interested in cybersecurity for today. Hello, welcome to Modern Threats Require Modern Approaches. I'm Bridger Moreland. I'm the CEO of Creative Agility, and I started my career all the way back in 1990, working with small to mid-sized businesses. I did spend a decade working with really large enterprises and understanding the tools and resources at their disposal, especially for compliance and security, I return back to the small and mid-sized business market, looking for ways to create value for our customers. Trying to develop a strategic direction where we can leverage technology in new and powerful ways. Over the past few years, cyber attacks have been evolving at a very rapid pace, and we've seen firsthand how that can disrupt our clients' business operations. It's been pretty severe in some instances. We've invited you to learn about today's cyber landscape because the more you know about digital security threats, the better you can protect your company and your customers and your data. And we are joined by Shanna Utgard. She is Senior Security Advisor at Defendify, who's one of our great cybersecurity partners. And I have just a few housekeeping items before we get started. All participants are muted. If you have any questions, please type them into that Q&A box. We will have time at the end of the presentation for some questions. And I will also be monitoring chat. So should you run into any technical difficulties, we will do our best to get you back up and running. Feel free to take a second and locate that Q&A and chat features if the last 2 years have had you using tools other than Zoom. And with that, I will turn it over to Shanna.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. Please feel free to use those chat and Q&A functions because we're going to be making sure that you're paying attention, although I have a hard time believing that anybody could fall asleep during this. So as Bridger mentioned, I am Shanna Utgard. I'm the Senior Cybersecurity Advocate here at Defendify, and we too focus on small organizations who do not have the resources and the security teams in order to effectively protect themselves from the cyber threats that we're going to talk about today. We are an award-winning all-in-one cybersecurity platform, and we partner with folks like Bridger and his team over at Creative Agility to help protect the people who don't have really big budgets. So because I'm a little bit animated, as you'll see, and I tend to make some really terrible faces while I go through this presentation, I'm going to shut my video off for a little while so that you guys can focus on the content that we're going to be talking about today. And we got a lot of fun stuff that we're going to cover. But the first fun thing is that for those local people, if you did not receive a Grubhub email, make sure you check your junk folder for thank you for attending our presentation today. We had a little dancing guys on the screen here. If it's still not there, message us in the chat and let us know that you did not receive it yet. So lunch, yay! But we're going to start off with a couple stories here. Then we're going to talk about who the bad actors are, how they're causing their crimes, and what you can do to protect your organization. So the first story we're going to talk about is the Anthem breach. Folks on this call may have even been affected. There were 78.8 million people who had their personal health information lost in this breach. And it all started with a phishing email that came into an employee. They interacted with that email and it allowed remote access to the network. One of the alarming details about this story is that it took Anthem almost a year to discover that an attacker was even inside their network. I start off with this story even though it's not as relevant to the small business space, just because you think about how much money Anthem probably has to put towards their cybersecurity budget, protecting that type of information. But it's still, on average, it takes organizations about 197 days, more than a half a year, to recognize that there even is an attacker inside of their network, even with the big budgets. But now we're going to go a little smaller. We like this next story because it's close to home for us. We're based up here in Maine. There are only about 1 million people in the entire state, but cyber attacks are still happening frequently here. This is a story about the Maine Office of Information Technology. They decided that they were going to use a tool to move their database. It was a web-based tool. When they did that, it accidentally put the confidential private information of 2,100 foster parents on a public-facing website. And the statistic on the bottom of this slide is that 43% of data breaches are caused by an insider threat, which is one of my favorite cyber threats. And later, we're going to cover what that actually is. And our last story here, this is an interesting one. MacEwan University is a Canadian school up in Alberta. They were doing construction on their campus, and they got an email saying, hey, we're changing banks in a few weeks. We want to make sure that the invoices are sent to the right place. And we've got this new bank. So that communication went on back and forth for weeks between the school finance company and the contracting company. And the university paid their invoices, but instead of paying the construction people, wire transfers totaling almost $12 million were sent to cyber attackers who were posing as the construction company all along. What's amazing is that a crime this significant was accomplished simply by email and could be perpetrated anywhere in the world. And the statistic on the bottom there is that 69% of firms state that employee training reduces the number of cyber incidents. Once you teach people in the company how to identify cyber fraud, you can really avoid having an incident of your own. So one of my favorite myths to dispel is that I'm a small business. I don't have any information that the attackers would be after. I'm not a target, so I can just keep doing what I've been doing, which would make sense, you know, kind of on a surface level. But when we actually look at the statistics, and we're talking organizations with 500 employees or less, half of cyber attacks are targeting small business. And when we look deeper into the statistics, 68% of small businesses report having experienced a cyber attack in the last 12 months. We're going to launch a quick poll here, number one, to make sure everybody's still awake. You know, I hope you haven't fallen asleep at this point, but our first poll is, has your organization experienced a cyber attack? So we've got three pretty simple answers here. We've got yes, no, and I'm not sure. So have you experienced a cyber attack before? All right, got about 40% of people who have participated. Anybody have lunch? Are we in a food coma? Is that why? Okay, yes, no, I'm not sure. And if you're in the I'm not sure camp, but you're not sure you want to put that as an answer, that's okay too. All right, so about half so far. Answers rolling in. Yes, no, I'm not sure. All right, I'll leave that up for a second here. We're going to talk about some of the sensitive data while we get some more participants in that poll question. I'm sure some people are probably looking for some Grubhub gift cards. So when we talk about sensitive data, what type of information we are looking to protect from these cyber attackers? The number one thing that we hear is credit card information. Oh, well, I don't store credit cards, I'm fine. But it goes a lot further than that when it comes to credit or to sensitive information. Could be you're looking to protect personally identifiable information, maybe for your own individual organization or some of your customers. Could be company IP and trade secrets. So think about sensitive information. Maybe it's you manufacture a product and you've got, you know, very specific diagrams, or like maybe even a recipe that you want to protect. Or maybe it's the companies that you work with. I work with a lot of law firms, and they have very sensitive details about, you know, maybe a merger and acquisition of a company, or you know, biological, you know, patents or things like that. Tax documents for your company and your employees. That's especially popular in January. We see a lot of W-2 fraud scams, you know, like, oh, I need you to send me all the tax documents for the entire company. Bank information and wire transfer details, vendor agreements, price lists, legal documents, contracts, and then of course, any of your customer sensitive data as well. So these are all things that could be considered sensitive data and need to be protected. One of the easiest ways to think about this is, would you want that information posted on a public facing website like the main foster parent story? If the answer is no, then it's sensitive and needs to be protected. So we'll share some results here from our poll. So we have 23% say yes, we've experienced a cyber attack, 41% say no, and we've got 36% saying I'm not sure yet. So we'll see how that changes by the end of this presentation. So who are we protecting our data against? Cyber threats come in a variety of different forms. There are cyber criminals that are causing their crimes to make money. That's up there in the top left. In the top right, we have our hacktivists. So those are people who are causing their crimes either because they don't like an organization or a certain political party or what somebody stands for. Anonymous is a great example of hacktivism. In the bottom left, we have our nation state attackers. So these are cyber criminals from other countries that are acting on behalf of their, you know, country and causing the crimes against the United States or other countries. And we do the same thing in reverse. They're calling it the fifth domain is cyberspace. So very common attack method nowadays. Oh, sorry. I advanced a little too fast. And in the bottom right is my favorite. These are the insider threats. Insider threats are current or former employees, contractors, anybody that had valid access to the network and data. Sometimes their actions are malicious. You know, they want to get revenge, or they've been working with maybe a nation state attacker to perpetrate, or sometimes they just do things by mistake. You know, let's say I'm going to send an email to Joe and I type JOE in and I hit enter and I populate the information, but I populate the wrong Joe. And then I've just sent sensitive information only because I was moving too quickly and under caffeinated. When we talk about the cyber criminals who are causing their crimes to make money, this gives you an idea of what data sells for in the dark web. As you can see, the more information that goes along with it, the more valuable it is. So medical records continue to top the charts, but we see everything from usernames and passwords, login information, credit cards, all the way up to that, you know, big medical records with a treasure trove of information. We've even seen crazy things like extortion of a CEO of a company because they have an undisclosed medical condition and they don't want anybody to know about it yet, and they found out through medical records. A lot of different tactics that these hackers use. We'll cover all of these in depth, but the most popular one is social engineering, or as I like to call it, people hacking. So this is using deception to manipulate people into divulging confidential or sensitive information that's used for fraudulent purposes. When it's conducted through email, it is called phishing with a PH. Back in the day, phishing used to be kind of a shotgun approach. We just send it out to as many people as we possibly can and see who responds. You may have even received an email a long time ago from a real live Nigerian prince or princess with millions of dollars to get out of the country. Believe it or not, we still see this quite frequently. But nowadays, the modern phishing emails are common services or goods or you know, vendors that people are using. So especially during the last 2 years, deliveries. A lot of people have been ordering things online. So a lot of FedEx or shipment notification spoofing. So they're making it look like it's coming from Visa or Office 365 or Zoom or all of these common services that we're using. There's a likelihood that you probably have been on a Zoom call in the last couple years, or that you have a Visa card in your wallet, or you might be expecting a FedEx shipment sometime soon. So this is casting the big wide net and just seeing who responds to that type of email. Then there is spear phishing. So spear phishing is sending emails to specific and well-researched targets. So there's a lot of work that goes into these spear phishing attacks ahead of time in, you know, an investigation and a research phase. So these attackers are on your LinkedIn, they're on your Facebook, they're on your company webpage. They're learning about the hierarchy in your organization. Who are the business leaders? Who have certain job responsibilities? Who might be in charge of, you know, HR or payroll or ordering? You know, somebody in IT. So they're looking for these specific roles and who might report to somebody else in the organization. They're looking for, you know, names and email addresses in a bunch of different types of databases. They're also looking at the type of information that's being shared about your organization. New employees are particularly good targets for cyber attacks because they post on LinkedIn that they've got a new job. They're really excited about it. So that notification goes out to, you know, not only their network, but also cyber attackers can see those things. New employees are also really eager to please. They want to do a good job in their new role. They want to look good. They're also unfamiliar with internal processes. So if they get an email looking like it's coming from one of the senior executives, they want to jump right on it and do a good job. Also, if your marketing team is doing a great job promoting things that your company is doing, like in that McEwen University construction example, there's even more information for the cyber criminals to utilize. So let's say you're participating in a local charity golf tournament or something like that. You post about it on social media, you're excited, you're sharing some pictures. That might be used to the attackers might say, hey, you know, this is Jim and I'm at the golf event. I need $1,500 worth of gift cards to give out because we're really busy and this is so much fun, but I'm not going to be able to respond to you. So I just need you to go buy that and send the numbers over to me. Another piece of information that the cyber attackers use is out of office emails. So let's say, for example, I'm out of office and I leave an out of office reply that says, please contact Glenn for any requests. They do a little bit of social media research. They see that I'm, having a Mai Tai in Tahiti, and they might craft an email looking like it's coming from me saying, hey, I'm in Tahiti. I'm unable to be reached right now. I've got bad cell phone service, but, Glenn, I need you to do this for me while I'm out. Or I might send an email to Joe saying, oh, while Shanna's in Tahiti, she asked me to do this for her, knowing that I'm going to be unable to be contacted or, not able to confirm that request. So really encourage you to stay away from out of office emails if they are not necessary. If you do have to be out of office for an extended period of time, we recommend just having your email forwarded to another employee and not sharing that type of information out there. And you may also see an email come in that looks like this. This is an example of pretexting. The attackers are focusing on creating, a good fabricated story or a pretext and to gather some additional information. So it might be, let me know if you're available. I need you to help me go shopping right now. Let me know if you're available. I need your personal cell phone number. That's a very popular one. So, or sometimes it's just as simple as, are you available right now? Looking for that response back. And it always looks like it's coming from one of the executives in the company. Anybody ever seen this before? You can either raise your hand or throw it in the chat. Yes, if you've seen one of these examples or any of the emails that we've gone through so far. And then once the attackers gather this information, they perform the spearfish. So even with the most expensive and comprehensive spam filters out there, these types of emails are still going to get through. And when they land on your inbox, these cyber attackers are trying to get you to do one of four things. They want you to fill out a form, trying to get some information out of you. They want you to open a file. They want you to click on a link, or they're trying to get you to take some type of action. So perhaps it's sending a sensitive document, paying an invoice, initiating a wire transfer, sharing confidential information, or buying gift cards. A couple quick examples here of different types of phishing emails. We're going to talk about these a little bit more in depth. Some of these training programs will try to teach you to go through and read a header, see who the actual from email address is, scan it for grammatical errors. We could go through some of those examples of how to recognize a phishing email, but the best way you can identify a phishing email is one of these types of emotional responses. Any of these phishing emails and requests are usually just shrouded in fear, urgency, uncertainty, doubt. So the best thing you can do is check in with yourself and see if that email is causing any type of emotional response. The goal of this email is to get you to act before you can think. So a lot of the emotions that are played off of are fear. So it might be, there's been an unauthorized login from, some crazy country that, would be a little concerning, or your account is going to be canceled, needs some type of action out of you. Greed is another great email that they, or emotion that they play off of. So we've seen money mule scams. We've seen, attachments that say company payroll information. So people want to know if other employees make more money than them. Also ties into the curiosity side of things, wanting to know how much other people make. Or sometimes it's an email like, I've seen these pictures of you. Helpfulness is another emotion that they try to play off of. So those requests from the managers going to new employees. Urgency, there's almost always a component of urgency. So whether it's, your credit card has been declined, or there's been a $700 Amazon order placed, the person who's making this request is unable to be contacted, or there's a time limit in which you need to respond. If you don't click on this link within the next 12 hours, and your account is going to be disabled. So a lot of urgency. And then oftentimes there is a reward or penalty associated. So something that you will gain or something that you will lose if you don't act quickly. So to give you some examples, these are all actual phishing emails that I have personally received. This one almost got me. So I don't know how many of you on this call are still working remotely, or if you went through that period of time where you were working remotely, but if you're anything like me, you've had one or two of those days where all of a sudden you realize that you've got to switch the laundry over, or the kids are screaming in the background. Something happens and all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be on a call right now. So this email played off of that feeling that a lot of us have experienced in this new working environment. So it was sent 1 minute after the hour. Your meeting attendees are waiting. Click this URL to start your Zoom meeting, because they want you to respond and react before you think. So, who is Sophia Johnston? A couple of the emotions played off of the urgency, the curiosity, want to be helpful. So this one almost got me, but thankfully I didn't respond. I stopped and thought first. Here's another one, EVVA payment report. So it looks like it's a remittance email. This would be something very commonly sent to people in the any kind of accounts payable, accounts receivable, finance type role. If you're expecting a remittance and you want to see what was sent over. So got a lot of emotions there. Voicemail notification, we see these a lot with voicemails, faxes, scans, those types of things where you've got a lot of the curiosity, fear, helpfulness. I've got a 54-second voicemail. I don't know who it's from. So you want to make sure that you're checking that. If you're in any type of HR role and part of your job responsibilities are to screen resumes and find potential candidates to fill, a opening that you have, you might receive attachments of people's resumes. This was a malicious attachment, so it's not actually a Fiona, not actually interested in a job. Even added in a password there to make it look extra secure. We password protected that resume. Highly recommend that you use a third-party tool in order to collect anybody applying for information and collect their resumes. So got a lot of emotions there. And this specific email is the exact reason why I don't spend a lot of time teaching people how to look at email headers or, scan for documents and when it came in or any of that type of stuff. This email came into me from somebody who I was actively working on a shared joint presentation with. So it came from the person's actual email address. It wasn't spoofed. It wasn't made to look like it was coming from the executive of the company. And this was somebody who we're doing this presentation. We've gone back and forth on what to include in our PowerPoint decks. We've had a couple of meetings to prepare for this. Both of our marketing teams at both companies are promoting this webinar and this event that we're doing together. So there was a lot of information out there. And this person's email had actually been compromised. So the attackers had logged in, they had set up a bunch of rules in the inbox. So all of the emails that were coming out from this person were being deleted from the sent folder. And then any replies to this email were automatically being forwarded off to the attacker's email address. So they were actually in his email sending this out as him. So if I had gone through all of those, look at who it was sent from, I'm doing work with him on a regular basis, I could have just assumed that he had shared a new document with me that I would need for our presentation. But because I wasn't expecting the email, he hadn't told me he was sending me over any documents, I picked up the phone and called. This was a very near miss of falling for a phishing email. So I picked up the phone and called him and I said, hey, I just got an email from you saying that you had shared a document with me. Is this for our webinar? And he said, no, do not click on that link. My email has been hacked. And it was a very near miss of avoiding something bad happened had I clicked on that preview my secure documents now. So again, using all the information that's being shared on social media, if you get anything that you're not quite sure of, the best practice is to pick up the phone and verify. So that one almost could have been tragic. And here's just a fun curiosity type one. It's weird. I don't even want to speak with you after this. Like, how could you do this? How am I going to explain this? Don't do this anymore. So another good one with fear, penalty, curiosity. And it goes further than computers nowadays. Text messaging can also be an attack method. These are all examples of real smishing. So we've got, phishing, spear phishing. Now we have SMS phishing. All smishing examples that I have received on my personal cell phone. There's a lot of reasons why text messages is becoming an increasing attack method. Part of that is because a lot of employees are able to access sensitive company information on their personal mobile phones. I'm sure a lot of you probably can access your company email. You also think about the open rates of text messages. There's no spam filters in place. Everybody opens up the text messages. These little shortened links, we don't really know where those actually go. And again, same types of emotions here, urgency, reward, penalty. The Netflix one is a great example of a reward email versus, my Visa card being blocked is a penalty. One message from AT&T, curiosity, what is that? And then FedEx delivery, you can see that one was right after Christmas. So a lot of people had packages that had been delayed through the holidays. So I'm sure there were a lot of people that fell for that. And then the other phishing we have is phishing. So voice phishing, a lot of people who answer the phone may be targeted for cyber attacks. A lot of this will come back to gathering additional information, small bits at a time in order to stage some later attacks. So anyone in your organization, if that's you or someone else who answers the phone, just be very mindful of what type of information that you are giving out. If you're not accepting the call, if they claim to be from, help desk or the bank or an angry customer or anybody trying to get more information, you always want to hang up the phone and call back on a known and verified phone number. You don't want to give out any sensitive information over the phone either. So the best way to handle any type of phishing, whether it's a email, a caller, a text message, anything that is unexpected, asking you for any type of sensitive information, you want to reach out to the sender to verify. So if someone's asking you to fill in a form, click on a link, open a file or an attachment, pay an invoice, or provide any type of sensitive or confidential information, and it was not expected, verify, verify, verify. One small additional step can save you a whole world of trouble if you were not expecting that call, email, or text message. One of the things that these attackers are trying to get you to do is open the attachments that are attached to the emails. It's a very popular malware delivery method, mainly because these documents get past antivirus programs with no problem. The attachments oftentimes are not scanned. The bad parts in that attachment haven't started functioning yet. So your traditional antivirus or email spam filter usually is not going to pick up on these. Sometimes the emails will even be so nice that they'll walk you through the process of how to enable content or enable editing or enable macros. Because once you click on that little button to enable content or enable macros, the malware that's embedded in there is going to start functioning. So it's going to run little bits of code that can allow a lot of subsequent bad things that could happen. It could allow remote control of your device. It could install a keylogger that keeps track of every keystroke that you're making, or it could deliver ransomware. If you haven't heard of this yet, ransomware is pretty catastrophic. You're going about your day, you open one of those attachments, and then bam, your screen looks like this. This is a type of malware that infects your computer. Next thing you know, all of your files are locked up, everything's encrypted, you can't access it, and you get a message saying, we have everything and you need to pay us X amount of money in cryptocurrency, and if you do that, we'll give you a code and you can unlock your data. Oftentimes, this ransomware is programmed to travel laterally through the network. So it might start with you, but then it affects other computers, servers, your backups or storage devices. One of the biggest problems with ransomware is downtime. So hopefully Bridger and his team have amazing backups in place for you, but even still, wiping all of those devices and reinstalling everything takes significant time, and there are often a lot of residual lingering effects of ransomware. Many companies find themselves down for days, weeks, or months at a time. We talked to a company here in Maine, and they were down for over a month. As you can see, the estimated cost of ransomware here just continues to climb. I am terrified to see what the 2021 statistics are, because it seems like every time there was a ransomware incident in the news, it was the biggest ransom ever requested. So it's probably going to be a lot higher for 2021. And the reason why this is increasing in frequency is, well, there's a couple of them. First of all, cryptocurrency doesn't make anything better. It makes it a lot easier to send and receive anonymous payments. They don't have to go out and get green dot cards anymore and try to launder money that way. Cryptocurrency makes it a lot easier, but more so, it's increasing in frequency just due to the availability. So there are basically do-it-yourself malware kits that are available to purchase on the dark web for as low as $50. It's kind of like a franchise model or a multi-level marketing pyramid scheme for these malware creators. So somebody makes this ransomware kit, and then they sell it on the dark web to anybody. I mean, you don't even need technical expertise to launch these types of things. They even have tech support in this, malware creator multi-level marketing scheme. You don't want to think of ransomware just as like, a computer virus or something like that. This is literally a well-organized criminal enterprise. It's kind of like the new age Ocean's 11 or, the digital mob, I guess you could say. There's the tech support people, there's the money people, there's the, programmers and coders who make the malware kits. And then they have a network of distributors who are out there in the world buying email lists off the internet and launching these attacks at all of these small businesses. And then the profits are split between the people who are launching the attacks and the people who created the malware. So it's happening more and more and more frequently. I went to a new chiropractor a couple weeks ago, and my chiropractor was telling me how a couple years ago they had a massive ransomware incident and it shut them down for weeks. The other thing that's changed with ransomware recently is it used to just be, I infect you, I demand some money from you, and then if you pay me, I give you the code and it unlocks all of your files, hopefully. But our IT teams were amazing, and they said, that's cute, but we're just going to have really good backups. So if that happens, then we'll just wipe everything and restore it, and it will be really inconvenient, but it won't be that bad, like in the grand scheme of things comparatively now. But the cyber attackers didn't like that very much, because these ransomware attacks were not as effective anymore. So now they're choosing victims based on the impact or the value of potentially leaked data. They're lurking for a little bit first. So they are looking for information about your company. Maybe it's, your revenues, or they're looking at what type of data you have. What's the value? Maybe you have medical records, and, that could result in a ton of fines and HIPAA violations and, reputation at stake. They're also looking for copies of your cyber insurance policy. Hopefully you have one, but they're looking for your coverage limits. So they know exactly how much to extort you for, where the cyber insurance company would likely say, it's probably going to be better if we just pay this instead of like trying to wipe and restore. So they're gathering all that information, and they're taking a copy of all of that sensitive data, and they're pulling that out before you get that ransom message. So now the ransom demand changes. Instead of just pay me to get your files back, which there's that part of it, it's also pay me to delete all of your information off of my off of my servers. But the other component is, if you don't want to pay me, then I'm going to release all of your client information or all this sensitive data on the dark web. And now you're going to have a data breach on your hands. You're going to have to notify all your customers that you lost all their sensitive information or their medical records or whatever that might be. Maybe have to provide, credit monitoring services depending on what type of information they took. And then just the whole reputational side of things that comes along with that. So it puts you really between a rock and a hard place. There's no good option there. If we continue paying the cyber attackers, they're going to continue to cyber attack. But if we don't pay them, then you take the hit of having to tell all of the customers that you lost their information, and then all their information's out on the dark web, and then that gets ugly too. So the best thing to do is just avoid that altogether. but it's hard. Another thing that these attackers are trying to do is capture your login credentials. So this is a word bubble of the most popular passwords. Hopefully somebody doesn't see theirs on there right now, but it shows you how we like to take some shortcuts when it comes to passwords, because passwords are hard. So the attackers will, when you click on one of the links in those websites, a lot of the times it will take you to a web page that looks like where you would be expecting to go. Maybe this was an email that said, there's been a problem delivering your email. Click here to sign into your Microsoft account, because a lot of people use Microsoft for email. So then it takes you to a page that looks like Microsoft. You see all the logos you'd be expecting. It looks familiar. You type in your email. The next page asks you for your password. On the back side of that website, the attackers are collecting everything that you're typing into that web page. So they're gathering your usernames and your passwords. The other thing that they'll do is they'll just guess what your usernames and passwords might be. They have automated tools that they can try all of these different combinations of certain types of passwords in milliseconds. So they can scrape your social media profiles. They can look and say, hey, a lot of people take these really easy shortcuts when it comes to passwords. Please, in your heads, not in the chat or anything like that, think about your password that you use for everything. If you're like most people, it's probably some type of combination of your pet's name, your kid's name, your birthday or your birth year, or your children's birthday or birth year, your anniversary, your local sports team, your hobbies, anything that has some kind of meaning to you, and a combination of an important number. You might get really fancy and add an exclamation point at the end of it, or 1, 2, 3 exclamation point. So they'll try all of these different combinations based on the sensitive information or personal information that they find about you on social media. So if you are using any of these types of things in your passwords, you definitely want to pay attention over the next couple minutes, because this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. The other place that these attackers are going to get usernames and passwords is from the dark web. So what you see here are some of the largest breaches that have occurred in recent history. In the middle column here, these are the number of accounts that were stolen in the millions. And then on the right-hand side, you see the type of information that was taken. Every time it's username and password, username and password, username and password. A lot of people look at this and say, yeah, but Shanna, I haven't logged into MySpace in forever, or I only set up MyFitnessPal that one time that my trainer told me to a couple Januaries ago for that one New Year's resolution that I failed at. So just because you haven't used these accounts in a long time doesn't mean that they're not still valuable to the attackers. Because the problem comes in is that we have that password, dog's name, year you were born, exclamation point. The attackers are able to find that from a list on the dark web. Let's say it's a Dropbox breach. And they see that I'm using shanna@company.com for my Dropbox login, and my password is sunshine123 exclamation point. They know that chances are I'm probably using that username and password combination across my more valuable accounts. So they're going to take that information and immediately start trying it in my Office 365 or my QuickBooks, or like maybe it's another type of software that your industry uses, or Chase Bank or Bank of America or whatever type of payroll system, trying to gain access to your more valuable accounts. So the bigger problem comes in with password recycling. No matter how long or strong your password is, if you're using it across multiple accounts, that's where we get into trouble. And researchers wanted to see, how do we make a password strong? So how easily passwords were able to be cracked. In this chart, you can see, the number of characters, and then we've got all the combination of upper and lowercase letters and numbers and special characters and hieroglyphs and musical notes and whatever else. So as you can see, the longer the password is, the more time it takes to crack it. So we've got a great little example here that shows you how many years it would take. Complexity versus length. So length is always greater than complexity. So one of the ways to create a strong password is to use something called a passphrase. So a long, strong sentence or multiple words that are strung together. They don't even have to make any sense. You can put spaces in between them. You can put special characters in there. So for example, this passphrase is protect all our customers, exclamation point. We got all is made out of numbers and special characters. But again, our bigger problem then is with creating unique passwords for each account that we log into. So the best thing that you can do in order to create a long, strong passphrase or a unique password for every account that you log into is to use a password manager. I mean, I don't know how many logins or websites or applications that you yourself use, but I saw on average that small businesses, you could log into easily 20 different applications over the course of a day. It would be impossible to remember 20 unique 15-character passwords. So if we use unique passwords, in the event that one of these passwords is compromised, then we know we only have to go in and change that one password to a new random unique one, and we don't allow the attackers access to all of the other more valuable accounts. So I strongly recommend that you implement this both at your organization as well as in your personal life. For 2022, I've been issuing a digital detox challenge to everybody. So get yourself up with set up with a password manager. There's tons of options out there. People are always like, what do you recommend? There aren't any really terrible choices out there. Just get yourself set up with a password manager. Try to not go down through the rabbit hole of different features and functions. Just pick one, use it, get it set up, and then every time you come across one of those old accounts that you're using sunshine123 exclamation point as your password, go in and change it to a unique random one. You want all your passwords to look like a toddler mowed on a keyboard for a couple seconds and got it all drooly. And a lot of people will say, well, what about my password manager? Of course, if somebody gets access to my password manager, then they would get access to all of my passwords, right? The most important tip that I can give you in this entire webinar is to turn on multi-factor authentication, or also known as 2FA. So you've probably seen this before. You log into your bank account from a new computer or from a different place, and you might get a text message with a one-time code that you have to enter after your username and password in order to log into your bank account. It's becoming more and more common. Sometimes it's forced, yay, but sometimes you have to go in and set that up on some of your accounts. So the different methods of multi-factor authentication, they all have varying degrees of security, starting off with the SMS, where you get a text message and a one-time code that you would enter into that website. There are push notifications, so it might ask if you're trying to sign in from a different device, and you just click yes, that's me trying to sign in. There are authenticator apps where you go in and type in a 6-digit code that changes every 30 seconds and enter that in. Or there's even little hardware tokens that you can plug into your computer, and that will give you, your second form of authentication. So multi-factor authentication is a combination of something that you have, which is your username and password, and something that you know, your username and password, and then something that you have or something that you are. So either a code, a push notification, so that's something you physically have in your hand. You can click, yes, that's me trying to sign in, or something that you are. So biometric scan, face scan, fingerprint, something to that effect. So something you have and something you are is the second form of authentication. So what that would then look like here is you enter in your username and password, then you get a code on a separate device, and then you enter that code in and you're able to log in. So then when you're if the attacker was trying to log in with my Dropbox information and try to log into Microsoft, then instead what they would get is this approve sign in request, and they would go, oh wait, I don't have a push notification to click yes to, so I'm just going to move on to some lower hanging fruit. So one of the most important tips that you can take from this webinar is to turn on multi-factor authentication wherever you are. This right here is going to stop a majority of cyber attacks in their tracks, just because it's one extra step and inconvenient for the cyber attackers. They like things to be easy. I've got 2 more tips, and then I'll tell you how to put it all together and with a story and a well-rounded cybersecurity program. And then if there are any questions, we'll take a look at those at the end. One of the tips that I like to share, because you probably have heard it before, but you might not necessarily know why, is connecting to public Wi-Fi. When you're traveling around, maybe you start going out to events, or you're staying in hotels, or you're working from coffee shops or airports, you don't want to connect your device to public Wi-Fi networks without any type of protection. You are now communicating with strangers on that public Wi-Fi network, and you have no idea who's also on those Wi-Fi connections. So it could be other people that are trying to run some tools or some scans against your devices. They could be looking for vulnerabilities that they could exploit, or just additional information. They could be trying to sniff and monitor your network activity or your keystrokes. The other risk that you run here is you could potentially be connecting to something called an evil twin, which, dad joke here in my picture is when you grow a goatee, you turn evil. But really what an evil twin network is when an attacker sets up a wireless router that is named exactly what you would expect that public Wi-Fi network to be. So it might be coffee shop guest Wi-Fi, or hotel chain name Wi-Fi. And they're trying to trick you into connecting to what you believe is being provided by the establishment. But instead, you're connecting to a little device that looks like this that the attacker has, and then they are while they're providing you with that internet service, they have complete control and visibility over all of your activity while they're providing you with that Wi-Fi connection. So if you have to travel for your job, there are a couple of solutions. One great thing that came out of the pandemic is a lot of organizations now have company VPNs available that will help to mask some of your network traffic so that they can't collect as much information. Or you can utilize cellular personal hotspots. So either on your actual personal cell phone, you can turn that into a Wi-Fi hotspot and connect to that. Or if you have a company issued cell phone, you can connect. Or you can even go to your cell phone provider and get a little, they call them like Wi-Fi bricks or Wi-Fi hotspots from your Verizon or your cell phone provider, and connect to those instead. So we recommend company policies that do not allow any company devices to connect to public Wi-Fi. And our last little story here is about the University of Illinois. They dropped about 300 flash drives or thumb drives, these USB removable storage devices, all across the campus. And they wanted to see how many people would pick them up and plug them into computers. Almost half. So people are really curious as to what is on them. Do I think somebody's going to come across your, company parking lot and lay a bunch of USBs around? I mean, they could potentially, but not as likely. Where we see this come into play more frequently is trade shows and different events. You might get this as a swag item, or sometimes salespeople will bring brochures and other information on USB keys. The obvious risk here is that there could be all different types of malware installed on those USB keys, and if you randomly plug them into your computer, it could put your organization at risk. But if your company allows the use of USB keys, you also run a higher risk of insider threat. So an employee could just, on their way out in the great resignation of post-pandemic life, they could take a bunch of your sensitive files or all their customer data if they're going off to a competitor. But even not being malicious, maybe you just have a great overachiever who decides to do some work on the weekend. They take some files or confidential information off of your server and they put it on a USB key. On the way home, it falls out of their purse, or they go to Starbucks to get away from the kids and get some work done, and they accidentally leave it on the table. We know from the research that half of people are likely to pick it up and plug it in. And if there's sensitive information on there, your organization could find themselves in the middle of a data breach. So So our recommendation is if you can, you should not allow USB thumb drives, but we have worked with plenty of organizations that absolutely have to use these for one reason or another, but there are ways to utilize encryption and require a special code in order to access the sensitive information on there. So let's put it all together. One of the big things I like to stress is that we cannot rely on just antivirus and firewalls anymore. This is a major challenge in today's cyber landscape. If you are even an ounce more worried or paranoid about cyber attackers than you were, 5 years ago, we're still using the same technology to protect ourselves as we were 5-10 years ago. These attackers are editing and altering their malware so frequently that it's really difficult for traditional antivirus companies to keep up. Traditional antivirus software has a big dictionary of all of the known malware that has been detected. So anything that you're doing, it's comparing against that known dictionary and saying, if you see any of this come up, we want you to block it. But there are 4 to 5 new malware samples that are released every single second, 350,000 a day that your antivirus company can't keep up with. So these attackers know that they can make a little small change, send it out, and most likely your antivirus or your spam filters are not going to pick them up. So antivirus and firewalls are just not enough anymore. You need multiple layers. So you want to have new technology that goes beyond just traditional antivirus and firewalls. Employee training. You've got to keep people up to date on cyber threats because that is your human firewall. And then a clear clear foundation of policies, procedures, plans, and what to do in the case of a cyber incident. It's kind of, I like this image with the different pieces of Swiss cheese all layered on top of each other. No single intervention is enough to prevent a cyber attack. So each of these pieces of cheese all has a hole. But if you layer enough of them on top of each other, then you get better protection. But there's still no technology silver bullet. Even if you have all of these pieces of cheese in place, something bad can still happen. So you want to take a defense in-depth approach. So let's put it all together and tell a story here. We want to stop the attacker at the top from getting down to our sensitive information in our files or trying to get some type of money or cryptocurrency out of us. So we start off with a threat model and a risk assessment. So where do we have holes? Where are we strong? Are we meeting our compliance objectives, depending on what industry you are in? And just kind of going through and seeing where are we starting from? Once you have a good basis and foundation, then we want to go through thinking about what type of data we want to protect, who we're trying to protect it from, how they would likely perpetrate that type of attack. So maybe we determine that somebody is going to come after our login credentials. They'll likely do it with a phishing email that takes us to a malicious website, and then they're going to try to go in and send some wire transfers out of our accounts. How bad are the consequences if we fail at protecting that information? How likely is it that I will need to protect it? And then how much trouble am I willing to go through in order to protect that? So that's very basic threat modeling exercise. Then we have our first layer of technology, scanning, monitoring, and filtering tools. So if email is our attack method, we want to have a good spam filter in place. We want to identify any vulnerabilities on our devices that the attackers would be able to utilize and use to kind of pivot and move around. If we want to take that a step further, we can actually simulate an attack and see, how bad it could be if an attacker actually did gain access to our network and what type of information they would be able to access. It's called ethical hacking or penetration testing. We also check for compromised credentials. So Bridger has the ability to check and see if your company has any compromised usernames and passwords out there on the dark web already. So if you're curious about that, he can run a quick preview for you and see how many hits you have. And then we also check applications and websites and check them for spam and malware injections or vulnerabilities. So after that first layer of technology, then we have the human side of thing. So we have authentication, user training, and policies. If we think about how these attackers operate, I'm an attacker, I want to go after Defendify. So I would do my research on LinkedIn. I see that Elise is an operations manager. So I'm going to craft an email with a malicious PDF with some code that would allow me to take over her computer. And I'm going to attach that PDF to a phishing email that says, hey, I need you to look at this payroll information and look like it's coming from Rob or Andrew, the co-founders. So hopefully, Elise has received really good guidance on how to use technology, has clear policies in place of exactly what is expected. She's had ongoing awareness training, so she's up to date on all the threats and the way that the attackers are trying to come after that information. She has these best practices reinforced that you pick up the phone and call and verify those types of requests. So hopefully she doesn't open that attachment. She knows about malicious macros. She also receives notifications about current cyber-related topics and scams and threats and vulnerabilities, everything that's going on out in that cyber landscape. And we've built up those defenses and taken her through cybersecurity batting practice. So every month she's had monthly phishing simulations to build up that muscle memory and recognizing those attacks that as they're coming in and responding appropriately. So hopefully she doesn't open that attachment and crisis averted, right? But we're all human, so sometimes we make mistakes. We want one last layer of technology in there with endpoint protection and encryption. We want an advanced malware protection solution that is capable of noticing the little signs that something bad is starting to happen, and we can stop it at that very last level. But if we don't have that in protection and the malware does start running and maybe we get a ransom message or something bad does happen, then we want to make sure that we have clear step-by-step instructions of exactly what to do in that case. Good backups in place so that we can wipe and restore those devices if that is an option. We want a well-rounded, comprehensive cybersecurity insurance policy in place so that we can recoup any potential financial losses that associated with any of that downtime. And then an incident response team that can come in, the professionals, help clean up the mess and limit the damage if something bad does happen. I like to say, if the milk spills, it's okay to cry about it. We don't have to throw away the whole cow. So you want to operate under the assumption that something bad can and will happen. It is the reality of today's cyber landscape. We just want to make sure that thing that happens isn't as bad as it can be, and that we're able to get back up and running and on our feet quickly with as little damage as possible. And cybersecurity is an ongoing posture that everyone in your organization needs to take. It's not a one and done project. It is here to stay. So Bridger, we've got a couple of free tools. You want to explain these to everyone?
I would love to. And sorry, the sun is coming out in Louisiana and it's coming out right over my head there. So I apologize for the flare. We do want to thank you for attending today. We want to help you take the next step in assessing and improving your cyber posture. So we're excited to announce our Essentials package. That's those 3 free tools that Shanna was referring to in the Defendify platform, and you can start using these immediately. The first free tool is the Cybersecurity Health Checkup. This will give you an instant picture of where you stand and recommendations on how to improve. And if you're under compliance regulations such as HIPAA or SOX or the DoD supply chain, there's color-coded dots to help you navigate those complicated frameworks. We also have you covered if you're just beginning to implement additional cybersecurity measures. We'll provide external network vulnerability scanning for one IP address. If you've moved employees to or from remote working environments in the last year or two, this service will check and make sure your network perimeter is secure. We'll scan every month for any vulnerabilities and then exposures on the devices on your external network. And as we've highlighted today, the cyber landscape is constantly evolving. The bad actors are playing a complicated game of cat and mouse. They're refining their tactics as we improve our defenses. And our threat alert system will keep you notified of key threat alerts and events that might impact your business. Twice a week, we compile the latest threat intelligence and deliver it directly to your inbox. And you might ask us, what's the catch? There's no catch, no obligation. The free tools are for yours for as long as you want to continue using them. We just look forward to getting to know you and your business and becoming partner that way. To sign up for the 3 free tools, send an email to info@creativeagility.net or give us a call. You can find the numbers and the contact and an instant meeting set up on our website at creativeagility.net. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your attendance, and I don't see any other Q&As over in the panel.
I know it can take a little while to type them, so I'll hang for just a second in case anybody has any questions that they want to ask. Otherwise, thank you all for attending. It's a crazy cyber world out there, so make sure you stay safe.
I appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. I appreciate all the positive feedback and the thank yous. Thank you for thanking us.
Hope everyone enjoyed lunch if you got it ordered from Grubhub. I had to feed my people before we came onto this.
That is always important. Don't want to do webinars on an empty stomach.
No, my team gets really hangry.
I don't trust people that don't get hangry. I'm also moderately envious because that just means that you do an amazing job of keeping your blood sugar up throughout the day. I've got a lot to learn from those types of people. Probably the same type of people who get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning and run.
I like to just graze.
Me too. I'm a big grazer.
We have a culture at our business where, there should be popcorn in the afternoons. We have tea time. Sometimes it comes with cookies and I get really excited.
Nice. Yes, working from home has been wonderful for my grazing habits. So I always appreciate that.
Some of our team comes to our house to work. Most of them work remotely. And I will make lunch or breakfast for them one time a day.
That is fantastic.
It's the little perks.
Right? Yes. I just wanted to share one of Glenn's dad jokes that he had tossed around internally here. He says, the password I always use is Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, Donald, Pluto, Huey, Dewey, Dublin, because it said my password had to contain 8 characters and at least 1 capital.
That's a dad joke, kind of funny right there. I'm laughing on the inside.
Yes. It's fantastic. All right, well, I don't see any more questions coming in. So with that, I say we're 5 minutes over the hour, and we've got a couple people who must have either they're hanging out for the entertainment factor or they've walked away from their computers and they're just letting the Zoom meeting run in the background.
That could be the thing. Grubhub, they're answering the door.
Fair enough.
We did have the one question that Fatin put in there about saving laptop passwords. And if we're talking about saving them in a browser, in a keychain or something, I did throw out the recommendation that it's probably not the best way to do it. There has been some security issues around that. We typically recommend that you save them in some type of authenticator or password manager. A free one that we put out there all the time for the small businesses is Microsoft Authenticator. It's a 2-factor authentication tool, but a lot of people don't realize you can also use it as a password manager.
That is a fantastic recommendation. I too do not encourage the use of a browser or keychain. Keychain specifically is usually an Apple type thing. You've got the keychain, in iOS. One of the problems with that is it doesn't transport very well from your iPhone over to a Mac if that's what you're using for your work computer. So saving everything in keychain, you'd have to be on all Mac everything all the time in order to utilize that. But the big thing is you need to make sure that there's another authentication method there. So give you an example. A friend of mine stored all of her passwords. She went through and created unique passwords. The browser suggested big, long, random ones, and she thought that that was a really great option for, following all the things that I preach about at dinner parties with my tinfoil hat. And then she had left her computer signed in, and her son went on and ordered $400 worth of products on Amazon because it saved, her passwords, and there was no additional authentication method. Anybody could sit down at the computer, go to a browser window, fill in all of the passwords. Security on them is getting a little bit better, but there was a time where literally there were tools that attackers would use they'd be able to go in and literally scrape all of your clear text passwords right out of your browser if they were able to gain access to your machine. There are some additional protections that they've been trying to put in place for those, but they're not good. The best thing is to use a separate, password management solution that requires some type of multi-factor authentication to get into that password manager. I don't see any other questions here.
I do not. In that case, everyone have a fantastic Tuesday afternoon and stay safe.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye.